You're listening to the Falconry Podcast with Ben Woodruff. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Ben Woodruff, here with the Falconry Podcast, and I'm here today with John Griggs.
Hey, everybody.
And John is here also representing his YouTube channel, which is Falcon's Ledge. John, you want to tell them a little bit about your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I mainly do hardware reviews and flight sims and stuff like that. There is a bit of falconry content that I'll post, and I do plan on doing some more hunting videos primarily, not educational like Ben's.
So everybody go ahead and check out Falcon's Ledge. Give it a like. And also on this channel, if you could hit subscribe and like, that really helps us out. And today we're doing kind of a fun subject that's applicable. We are going to be talking about the steps of raising an imprint falcon.
Yes, that sounds like a lot of fun because I'm probably going to be taking a imprint peregrine falcon. Well, probably is a little bit vague. I likely am going to be taking a imprint peregrine this year.
Tis the plan.
Really excited about doing that. It's been a childhood dream, so I'm rearing and ready to go for it.
And it's an exciting one, too. Raising, in America, the laws, you cannot raise an imprint as an apprentice. And if you're totally new to this and you're not familiar with the concept of imprinting, imprinting is raising offspring. It doesn't have to be a bird of some kind. It could be, there's mammals, whatever. But it has to be done correctly. You have to understand what species, what taxon, and the impact you can have. And the reason, at least in the United States, why apprentices are not allowed to raise a bird from a baby, from an Eyas, this is the term we use, an Eyas, is because if you do it wrong, there can be very bad problems with this. Aggression issues, vocalizations, the bird thinking you are its mate and trying to attack you. So things have to be done right in order to have that happen correctly and safely. And so we just kind of wanted to go through some of those principles. And again, we've been chatting back and forth a lot, not on the podcast about this, just because John and I are friends and we're amping up for him getting this baby peregrine. Now, John, you've raised some imprints yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, I've raised a few. A lot of my flying has been with passage and family birds, but with imprints, I've done a couple kestrels, a prairie falcon, and a Cooper's hawk.
Gotcha. And the principles we're going to be talking about, a lot of them apply. But remember, as we always say, falconry, when you're learning falconry, when you're learning techniques, training, do not view them as doctrine or law. These are principle-based techniques that we are sharing, but you need to tailor it, first of all, to your bird. Every bird is a different individual. But you also need to listen to different ideas. We are just sharing techniques today that have worked well for us. We are not saying that this is the only way or the right way. These are some right ways that are effective. And
probably some wrong ways.
Probably some wrong ways in there too, yep.
Yeah. I am here, so,
You have to be adaptable. You have to be adaptable, and it's always good to learn. So first of all, if you are polling an Eyas, that doesn't necessarily mean it's from the wild. You could be getting a captive bred bird. I don't really want to go too much into age. That is a personal preference. You might want to talk to the breeder if it's a captive bred bird, or your sponsor if even if you're a general or master class and now you're pulling your first Eyas, might be good to talk to your sponsor and get some input on what age, regardless of the species. For me, I do like to pull, if I'm going to pull a large falcon, I like to get a downy chick. I don't usually like them in the realm of a few days old. That's just me. I like them a week old, 2 weeks old, so they're a little more stable. But usually that's when I pull, unless I'm dead set on what gender I'm trying to pull, and then I like to wait a little longer so that I know what I'm getting. Now, John, I can't remember. Do you have a preference on what you're going to try to pull this year as far as gender?
Basically, we're just going to kind of pull the smallest one. I'm kind of hoping for a male. As you and I have talked about doing Periacs, and so a male would be ideal. But if I end up with a female, I'm not going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty easy that way.
Well, and a peregrine's a peregrine.
Yeah. Yep.
Peregrines are interesting because it's pretty much a worldwide species, and everywhere you go, there's ranges in size and color. But I've only done, 3 or 4 subspecies, but everybody I've talked to worldwide who's flown a peregrine, male or female, they have a lot of fun and a lot of success. But you may be targeting a specific prey item. So that is something to consider. If you know for a fact, hey, I'm going to be going after really large drake mallards, and you're going to fly a peregrine, maybe you want a female. Or if a prairie, maybe you want a female. For
my particular situation, I think I know where I'm going to be living. See, we're in transition. We're looking to buy a new house right now. Mm-hmm. And as you're well aware, in Utah, the market is incredibly terrible.
It's nuts right now.
If you're just considering getting into the market here in Utah, don't. So
run away.
neither here nor there. There are a few different places that I'm considering moving. And the one that's the most likely has some waterfowl available. I've checked, and they're in the hills. There's chukars. Mm-hmm. There's also some pheasants, but those are probably a bit more rare. If I want to travel, there are other game birds available. So I think that it's probably going to be larger game birds. So really, either will do fine.
Yeah. Well, and for any of those, you could do either gender. If I was just targeting chukar. My best chukar hawks have all been male peregrines.
Oh, yeah.
All of them.
Or quail. Heck, if you have quail, a male peregrine, that would be a lot of fun. I mean, if you were using dogs so that the quail would try to kind of outrun the dog.
Mm-hmm. Just do a low pitch with
that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, quick, short flights would be a lot of fun, I think.
But you could also, you definitely could do, obviously any large falcon, you can take out pigeons, but doves, I've had, with Anatum peregrines, I've done a fair amount of dove hunting, both mourning doves and those non-native ringneck doves.
Those are everywhere now. Everywhere.
So those are a lot of fun too. But so the principle is, you're thinking of getting an Eyas, whether it's captive bred or from the wild, you got your permits in place. Think through, what are you hunting? And if the gender is going to matter, then maybe you want to wait until they're a little older. I think it matters more with accipiters as far as what plan of what age.
Yeah, that's gonna, with accipiters, it's a big thing. Like if you're flying a Cooper's hawk, a male Cooper's hawk is not going to do ducks at all.
Nope.
Whereas a female, you could do a limited number of ducks and probably not absolutely trash the tail feathers of your bird. The males really, anything quail or pigeon down, and the females, they're way more flexible. I mean, you can hunt cottontails all the time with a female and be just fine.
Yeah, they can handle it. You just have to acclimate them to it.
So I think that with the accipiters, there's a big difference, and maybe that's because of how physical they are with things, whereas the falcons rely on that strike, where both a male and a female hitting a duck, for example, are both going to hurt it pretty bad.
It's like a brick making a pass like a jet fighter, whacking them.
Where do you hit, with one brick or two bricks? It's still a brick.
It's still a brick whacking into you. That is totally different because there's not the wrestling on the ground to the level that you would have like with an accipiter. So that's a good point. But let's say you get your bird, you get this Eyas, you get this baby, a little fluff ball or whatever age, maybe it's got feathers already coming in. When you're at home, what John and I do is we make some sort of an artificial nest. Now in the case, I used to be really, especially with hawks and owls and stuff that I was raising for a baby, I'd weave a stick nest and have fluff inside, and it's like you just got to have something. It could be a little mini Rubbermaid container with some sort of padding that can be removed and cleaned. You got to have something. It doesn't really matter what it is. It just needs to keep the bird secure. And remember, falcons don't even make a nest. They just use a ledge. Might have a little bit of dirt and gravel in it, but falcons don't even build a nest. But you got to have something. Some people will take pea gravel and put it in. I've done that a couple of times, but that's, again, similar to the nest ledge of a falcon. But not everybody does this, but in my mind, you want this nest item, this portable nest, to be just that, to be portable. To take it around the house and to take it places with you so you can keep your bird with you.
You know what I used?
What's that?
It was a milk crate filled mostly with pine needles or pine branches. And then
mm-hmm.
I kind of put because my Cooper's was really young when we took it, 1, maybe 2 days old.
Yeah.
We put a heating pad in the middle of it. And so it kind of sat down on the heating pad, and then was surrounded by these pine branches off of the fir tree that I have in the backyard.
Mm-hmm. Now the concept, a lot of people, this is actually fairly new. A lot of falconers might not know this, and I feel really bad because I totally forgot about talking about this. I don't remember who it was who discovered it. I've been to 2 of his lectures on this, but basically, there was a falconer who had noticed that a lot of raptors, once they start sitting on the nest, they will take greenery of the conifer family. It could be, pine tree, fir tree, spruce tree, and they will line the nest with it, and they keep replacing it. Now that, especially with a true pine, that's not going to make anything soft. And people said, well, maybe it's camouflage, but why do they keep replacing it? Well, it turns out there is a fungal disease called aspergillosis, and these asper spores on a nesting mother and on the babies that are sedentary, they're just sitting in the nest. Because they're not inhaling and exhaling excessively like a normal hunting bird would, because they're just sitting around, it is much easier for the asper spores to lodge and take hold in the lungs of the birds. And so the mother and the babies are at risk. And so it turns out the resin that off gases from fir or pine or spruce sprigs actually is antifungal. Incredibly antifungal. So now there's, from that research, there's been all kinds of new treatments to treat birds that have aspergillosis by putting them in a travel box with a bunch of fresh cut pine or fir needles, and it helps fight off the infection or the fungal infection. It's usually followed up with some antibiotics as well, because the bird's body will have kind of dipped down in its ability to fight off regular bacteria in the body as well. But so that's one of the really brilliant things that John's talking about here is it is wise. You don't have to, but it is wise to periodically put fresh conifer trimmings in or around, cut up around in this little nest.
And keep in mind that this is not to get rid of a existing aspergillosis infection, but rather a preventative measure to help keep your bird from getting aspergillosis. Of course, that's not going to guarantee that it doesn't get it. You still need to make sure you're doing checks. You still need to make sure you have the medication on hand to be able to help if something happens. But it's just one of those things that kind of helps out, right?
Yeah, just a wise preventative measure, and it can be very good. It's rather normal. Not as big of a threat with falcons, other than jeers, for getting aspergillosis, but any bird, any raptor can, certainly. So, but
yeah, with my accipiters, I actually cut some of the pine needles, so I'd put them in there, and then I would kind of cut some of the needles in half so that just parallel cut or along the needles to open some of them up, and you could definitely smell the pine in there, and kind of helps with the smell too.
Well, and it makes sense because you have to think there are many type of fungi that want to attack roots, and so as conifers drop their needles below them, because the resins in their needles that off-gas are antifungal, then it makes a mat underneath them that kind of prevents active root-killing fungi from attacking them. And so birds are just using that as well, so there's no reason why we can't as well. But now when you have your bird at home, whether it's from the wild or from a breeder, the bird's got to eat. And it's been being fed by parents, and now here you are, this big monkey man or monkey woman, like, hey, eat this food. Some birds take to it readily, but usually unless you have a reason otherwise, mostly you want your bird not to overly associate you with food. So you need them to self-feed, and so usually you want to take a stick, some sort of a twig or a stick, and dangle food above them. Maybe make a little whistle or a little chirping sound like a parent might. And usually that's where they're used to seeing food. So they'll reach up and hum, 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 hum. Next bite, do it a little lower, until finally you with a stick are bringing food below them and they are bending down and self-feeding. That way they're never seeing your hand or your fingers hand them food directly, because that's not good. What's up? That's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that it's a step-by-step process. Now, if you'll probably see, if you do reading or a little bit of online searching, that at this stage, a lot of times you'll have situations with an endangered species, like when peregrines used to be listed as endangered, or condors, things like that, where you are trying to raise a baby to go back to the wild, and you need to not to be imprinted on humans in any way. And so they'll actually make elaborate puppets that look like a parent bird, and they'll have that puppet feed the babies, so that they are facially imprinting on another bird, so that then when they reach sexual maturity, their brain is wired that, oh yeah, this is what I am. I'm a condor, or I'm a peregrine, and when I'm looking for a mate, that's what I need to be seeking out. At least that's the logic behind it. And falconers will sometimes do that, but if your whole point is you're just trying to have a hunting companion, then you need them not to associate you as a parent, but still associate you with food. So you want them to be socially imprinted on you, and that food is just one part of the life. So that little nest, make sure they're warm, but you can take them everywhere. If you can, if you have a job and they'll let you take them to work, or take them with you every place you go. Let them see sounds and people and commotion and cars to help them have all of those things from a very young age be part of what they're used to. And I don't know if you do this, John, but for me, I also, at fairly early on, within the first few days, try to switch out where instead of bringing them food, I try to actually bring that whole container, that portable nest, to their food. And I have that food either be a carcass or a lure. But we'll I don't know. We'll get into that in a second, a little bit more on the carcass of the lure, but do you like to keep them in that little nest longer, or do you like to let them run around?
Well, I kept my birds in the nest until they could kind of run around. Like, as soon as they were able to, stand up, kind of walk around, then I transitioned them into a nest that was not quite so bowl-shaped, so that they could, I could easily bring them down and let them walk around it. Because I don't know if, I'm sure that you know this, but you don't really want to pick up Eyases by their belly and let their legs hang, especially accipiters. Accipiters, I think, are more susceptible to getting problems when you do that. So, having a nest box that you can, pick them up in, or kind of shoo them into and then pick vertically. So that was always nice. But yeah, I liked to let them run around and be silly. And, by that time, the dogs were totally used to them and weren't really any kind of a threat to that. In fact, the last time I even had a cat, and the cat wasn't at all interested in the bird, because we had out of the birds and it was quite aware of what they were capable of. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think as much experience of running around and discovering things is a great thing. Yeah.
And it's actually not unnatural either. You just have to have the principle be that your home is the nest. Your home is the eyrie when they're to that age where they're running around, which is messy, but it's only a matter of a few weeks. So remember, we always say on these videos, remember, a nest is not a home. A nest is a crib. And those juvenile birds want to be out and about away from that nest, whether climbing, walking, or flying, as soon as they can. And it's the same thing in the wild. As soon as they have feathers starting to come in, even remotely, the baby birds are running around the cliff face and doing little short flights. It's not like in the movies or in the motivational speeches where the birds never fly and then there's this great moment of courage where they take their first flight. It's like, no, if it's a hawk in the forest, it's hopping branch to branch, doing flutters, doing flights. If it's a falcon, it's running along the cliff face, flying from ledge to ledge. And just it's not just one moment. And just turn your front room into that. Just put tarps and blankets all over everything. It's messy, and there's feather shafts coming off everywhere. Well, not coming off. The keratin casing around the growing feathers comes off, and so it's messy. It's obnoxious. It's poopy. Keep it clean. Just keep replacing stuff. But let them have the run of the couch. Let them run around and watch TV with them. Just let them socialize. And
let them interact with your dogs. I mean, it's incredible how much better of a relationship you can create with your hawks and your dogs if they've actually spent some time together.
Mm-hmm.
The dogs know, oh yeah, the hawk's always around, and the humans make sure I don't mess with it, and there's no threat from the hawk.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're building that
just
relationship.
A better situation. Yeah.
And it makes them so much more social, because one of the things you don't want is a screamer. You don't want a bird that's freaking out, just screaming all the time every time it sees you because you represent a parent. If instead you bring it to food, and if instead it's used to hanging around with you or your family, dogs, cats, and it's used to that social time, then it's far less likely to be a vocal bird, that's what you want. You don't want a loudmouth bird. Now, you want to have some things out, both when they're younger and they're in your little portable nest, but also when you let them have the full run of your front room. You want to have their lure out for them to grab onto, play with. You want to have a hood near them so they get used to the sight of the hood if you're going to be hooding your falcon. And the food you're giving them, usually I'm feeding quail, especially on a big falcon is what I'm going to want. And you want to bring them a quail carcass that is torn open and where the meat has been scored, but you want early on to teach them to pick at it and foot it. Now, you might have to go help them out, or maybe you have to cut up some of the breast meat into little pieces and put it back on the opened carcass.
That's what I would do, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would make a little... So by that time, I had been feeding the Coopers a pile of food anyway.
Mm-hmm.
A little pile of chopped up things. What I would do is bring it to the nest, or bring him to a towel on the ground with the pile and another towel on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would basically get behind him and then pull the towel away.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden he'd see, oh, there's food there. So yeah, it was a kind of a primer for, hey, I'm going to start putting these things on the corpse, and then it would be less and less of it would be chopped up. And so it would kind of promote some tearing.
Mm-hmm. And it's bit by bit. And you have to remember, this happened, all these changes happen quickly. The growth of the feathers, the size of the bird, the strength of the bird, these happen hour by hour. They grow ridiculously quickly. Keep them back, keep them happy, but make sure that, and depending on how important the lure is to you, you got to have them eating off the lure some of the time, but just have the lure out even when they're not eating it. And always have a carcass available for them to pick at, even if it's not feeding time. And then you're going to have to swap it out. But the principle with this is you want them, again, to be familiar with loud noises, familiar with you in ways that are not always directly related to food. And you want to help them understand I walk or fly to food rather than it coming to me. And so you're actually helping them mentally grow up a bit earlier than they would in the wild. Because the parents don't care. For the first part, the parents are just feeding the birds. They're like, here's your food, here's your food, here's your food. But then you reach that point where your bird in the wild, the parents know, hey, my baby's just a baby. It doesn't know how to hunt. And it needs to learn how to hunt, or else it will die. And you might not think about it, but live prey is intimidating to a baby. Even if the baby is full-sized, it's intimidating. And a parent knows that, And so what parents do is they will bring hampered prey or injured prey of some way to the nest or near the nest, and the Eyases, the young falcons, the young hawks, will then pursue that injured quarry. And that way, when they grab onto it, they see, oh, it's moving, it's making sounds, it's fighting back, but they know that's food because mom brought it.
And, I have a bunch of pictures for these things as well that we could show. It'd be really cool.
But the basic idea is you need to facilitate that just like a parent would. You have to find a way. And the term we use for that is bagged game. The British term used to be like, oh, maybe you're out flying your goshawk and it caught a rabbit or caught a hare, and you quickly swapped it out, kind of like catch and release with a fish. But you put it in your game bag. This is back in the medieval times. And you took it back home, and one of your new hawks that didn't know how to try yet, you released that slightly injured rabbit out, and that the new hawk that didn't know how to hunt yet could go chase it. So that's roughly where the term bagged game came from, because it was put in the game bag and re-released later. I think it's kind of taken a new term, so people use the term baggies. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything that was pre-caught anymore. It just means, hey, if you're going to help your bird learn how to hunt with an animal like a rabbit or a sparrow or starling or a pigeon that is not currently wild, you hinder it or hamper it and allow your bird to catch it. So it's a guaranteed success for your bird, but you're right there with them so that you can intervene if there is any need to, if your bird's intimidated, so you can jump in and help them out. So they have 100% success, 100% guarantee.
Yeah, it's a much safer situation for your bird.
Because it can be intimidating. So if you're doing a big falcon, a prairie falcon, a peregrine falcon, what would your route be, John? What would you choose for bagged game in those early stages?
Well, I think the safest bagged game for something like that would be, and of course also legal, would be starlings and sparrows, since they're invasive, they are easily trapped, and most importantly, out of all of that, they're a safe quarry for your birds, something that's easy for them to control, not going to be a threat to them. So, because you have to remember that this bird's never been in contact with this sort of thing. Its food has never tried to leap off of its plate before, but all of a sudden it's going to. So a bird or an animal that's not going to be as dangerous is going to be ideal.
It's kind of like if you had a toddler that had regular food, human toddler its whole life, and then one day that kid's eating a hamburger and the hamburger starts fighting back and struggling. That kid's going to freak out. It's the same thing.
Mental images here.
This hamburger. But it's the same principle. And so you got to do that. I think sparrows and starlings are good as well for like a big falcon, because they're not thinking big or small. They're just thinking moving or not moving. So that starling's moving, and then they get to eat the whole thing. And of course, you jump in and help them, quarter up into, bite-sized portions if you need. You take your game shears and cut up pieces of meat after it's been dispatched, and you help them out. But that way they are used to, they think, I caught something living, which they did, even though you helped them. But then you instantly are there helping them eat it, helping them dispatch it. And so that you've already set up a hunting scenario. Now, later on, of course, most people flying big falcons are going to start training using pigeons, or pheasants, things like that. But for this early stage where we're talking about raising an Eyas, then that's more of what you want to do, is something probably small and easy and safe.
Yeah, and the reward is a bit bigger because a lot of people won't feed from things like pigeons.
Yeah.
Because of the risk of disease. But with starlings and sparrows, they're pretty safe.
Yeah,
so you can do that sort of thing. You can also get a hold of Coturnix quail. They're pretty good for that sort of thing if you need something a little bit bigger, like kind of as a median type thing. But yeah,
intermediate there, switch it in between. That's a good idea. Around this stage 2, you got to kind of start thinking about equipment. And jesses, some people just put jesses on whenever. For me, I like to get them used to the feel of something on their ankles, on their legs, before I put the actual anklets on. So I will take chrome tanned deer hide, really soft, very soft leather. It's a lot of times used to make clothing. And I'll make a pair of anklets or a pair of false jesses, that are just like single piece jesses. Something short, something soft, something easy. And that works for, a week. Put that on, they get used to it, they get used to the feel, it doesn't bother them. And then after a week or two of that being on, then you can switch them out and put on some, nice kangaroo hide jesses and anklets that are sturdier, but a bit more rigid. And same thing with the hood. If you're going to hood train your bird, and again, everybody's got different viewpoints. I acknowledge that, but my personal way, I like my birds to be able to be hooded. And what I'll do is I will have the hood around them all the time they're growing up, and I might hold it up to their face regularly, but I don't put it on. But then when they're starting to get their feathers in, then I will put the hood on, but never pull the drawstrings, which are called braces. I never pull the braces closed. I just on, off. On for 10 seconds, off. On for 30 seconds, off. On for 5 seconds, off. And just get them used to that. And it's much later on when you're out in the field that I start actually pulling the braces, because I want my falcon to associate that putting on the hood is one thing and pulling the braces in back is a totally separate thing. I want that bird to disassociate those two acts so that that helps them not resist the hood. And they're like, oh yeah, this hood's just on and off a lot, and every once in a while the braces get pulled. So I don't know if that's kind of how you do it with your falcons, but that's kind of what's worked well for me, my experience.
I've had a little bit of a break on hooding imprints because I didn't hood my kestrels, nor did I hood my my coopers. I kind of found that hooding the coopers kind of soured the relationship. Mm-hmm. So I didn't do it with my imprint. Now some people do, and if that's the way that it works well for you, more power to you. But yeah, I pretty much followed your process on hooding imprints when I trained my prairie falcon,
and it works. I mean, but there's a lot of ways that work, but the main thing is to ease them into this. But basically what we've gone over, that's just kind of the basic outline, the basic process, and you can mix it up. Just remember, every bird is an individual, and so of course you need to tailor your scenario to the needs of your bird. But across the board, raising a bird from a baby, from an Eyas, the more you associate yourself directly with food, the more that you have the opportunity for troubles, from vocalization to aggression. So you got to be very mindful of that. And you can't be sloppy about it because they grow so fast. Just 1 day or 2 days of any training technique is going to totally alter the bird because they grow ridiculously fast.
Yeah, they do.
But I think that covers the basics. Do you have any other thoughts on raising imprint falcons?
No. Oh, one thing, when you mentioned that your home is going to be their eyrie or their nest site, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that, if I were to do it again, particularly with the coopers, and this is surrounding vocalization, I might actually try to raise them outside. So in my backyard, in a side yard, maybe someplace they're not going to go very often. It's particularly with accipiters, they do tend to associate areas with food. So
yeah, they're more territorial than a falcon usually.
Yeah, a lot of like small birds, like anything up to cooper size, pretty much, I'm going to keep inside. Mm-hmm. So if I were doing this again, I would avoid the room that they're going to be perched in like it's the plague when they're young.
Gotcha.
So, once they get into that they're tethered, they're perched or whatever phase, that this room is entirely new. They have never seen food in this room. This is just a room where they sit and chill. Mm-hmm. And I think that will probably go miles towards that.
Yeah,
there's other things like hacking that can help and stuff like that, and that would be an awesome subject for another video. But that's a fairly complicated subject.
Yeah, we definitely should do a hacking video though, both with falcons and with accipiters.
Yeah, because there's different methods of doing it. In fact, I've been considering doing tame hack type stuff where I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the tame hack is when you take your bird out for periods of time and, you put the telemetry on, you just let them fly around, where they're not like out fending for themselves for a few days or something like that, right?
Yeah, and there's different versions. Some people will do it where their bird is released and their bird comes back to the house on its own every night, like an eyrie. Some people, I do it where I'll put them out and give them several hours out and about hunting, and then I go retrieve them. So there's all different versions, but yeah, that principle is to kind of do a halfway. So they're halfway between being an imprint and halfway between being a passage bird. So you're hopefully getting the best of both worlds, where they're kind of learning those things. But I like your idea. I think that's true that if wherever you're going to permanently have your bird, you have to feed them in a certain space as an Eyas. And whatever that space is, if you can have it not be the same space as once you have them as a hunting bird, then you're going to win. And some people I know will do it to the extreme, where a couple of people will be like, hey, we're going to pull 2 goshawks, two prairie falcons. You raise mine, I'll raise yours. And then, which you can legally do that with the paperwork. You just have to write the note of temporary possession and care. It's like a month. And then when they're ready, you just swap birds back over, and then you're good, because now they're at your house and the food is happening in the field, not in your front room. So
it's an interesting idea too.
It can really work really well that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Great principle. But I think that covers the basics. If you have other questions you want to ask us about imprints, again, we didn't go super in depth. We've been shooting the breeze about this subject for a few days, and we thought we'd kind of share a couple thoughts and a couple of the basics. But if you have other techniques that you have found really well, please let us know those in the comments. If you would like us to answer any other questions that maybe we can help with about imprinting birds, let us know as well down below. And please hit subscribe. Please check out John's channel. Remember that his channel is Falcon Sledge. And as always, happy hawking.